All right, this next one started coming in now, and it's about grub worms. A lot of you guys are out digging in your lawns now that spring is here, and you're finding grub worms. And I typically am mostly seeing this up north, but I actually even found some grub worms in my lawn in February this year. And so your first instinct is when you dig up and you find grubs, and by the way, you're finding grubs right now, they are big. They are full grown. They look like giant little shrimp underneath the lawn. And so they're even scarier than if you found grubs last fall, which are smaller and not mature. But I want to tell you that the grubs in the spring are probably not the case, because one of the things that I always notice when people send me pictures of grubs that they found, if they're not in a garden bed, if they're in the lawn, what you always notice is that the grass around the grubs that they found is green. And that's usually your first clue that you have a grub problem, is your grass is brown. So we'll come back to that in a second, but let's just talk about the lifestyle of grubs. So I call them grub worms. That's because that's a searched keyword on the internet. They're not actually worms. They're larvae, so they're just grubs. But grubs are the larvae of Japanese beetles. You know what Japanese beetles are? They're June bugs. You'll find them in your pool filter every single year in June. Sometimes they'll come out a little early in May. Sometimes they might come out in June, but depending on the weather. But the one thing that you'll find is that those will swing around. They'll fly around. They'll eat your purple plum bushes. They'll eat on, sand cherries. I think they eat rose bushes too pretty hard. I found them on Rosa Sharon one year up north, just ravaging my Rosa Sharon. But you'll find these Japanese beetles, masked Schaefer beetles, they're called June bugs. You'll find them in June, and they buzz around and they lay eggs, in your lawn, and they do that through June and into early July. Now, the thing about it is they'll typically lay those in well-irrigated lawns. If you're a mama June bug and you're flying around and you want to drop off your larva, are you going to drop them off in the uncared-for dormant brown lawn, summer dormant lawn, or are you going to drop them off in the lawn that the guy's got his stuff together and he's got a beautiful, beautiful green flat nursery there for you to raise your larva in, or for your larva to fend for themselves? And of course, you're going to lay them in the well-watered lawn. The other thing is that the well-watered lawn, the green lawn, is a sign that there's roots there for the grubs to eat, because that's what they do. So all summer, they kind of mature under the ground a little bit. And then as they mature, they come up and they chew on grass roots. And they'll chew on the roots of the grass all during the summer and into the fall. You won't notice the damage if your lawn is struggling in summer, because most lawns struggle in summer, even well-irrigated ones. So sometimes you don't notice what those brown spots really are. You think it's something else. But as the fall comes and everybody greens up and everything starts to green up, some areas don't come back, and you'll see these dead patches, and you'll be able to peel them up like carpet, and you will literally find the grubs. They'll look like little shrimp underneath the lawn. Specifically and mostly, they'll be at the edges of the brown spots. That's where they'll be, because they're working their way out, feeding, they're fattening up. And then once soil temperatures, going to be funny here, once soil temperatures start to dip below, 55, they start to go down deep. That's a cue to them that winter is coming, and they start to go down deep, and they get down deep enough so that they can live over winter, frozen in a beautiful time capsule underneath your ground all during the winter. And then as the year progresses, they'll come back up, and in spring, you're finding them now. They're coming back up for one last little munch here before they get to June again, and they emerge as adult beetles, and the process starts all over. That's the beautiful life cycle of the June bug, of the masked Schaefer beetle. And there's a bunch of other names for them. So when you look at it that way, the ones you're finding now are last year's grubs. So my first question to you would be, well, did you have grub damage last year? Were these areas dead? Because they're green now. So if you did have grubs there, they probably were not in high enough populations to cause you any long-term damage last year, so they're probably not a concern this year, especially in the spring when the grass is growing super vigorously anyway. If it outgrew them last year in the fall, it's probably going to outgrow them this year in the spring, and they're not going to do quite as much munching in the spring. The fall is really when they're ravenous. Right now is when they're just kind of chilling. Maybe they're bringing up a little extra bite here or there, but their main goal is to go to that next stage of life, and I'm not sure what the right word is there, but they're going to pupate, or whatever they do, and come out as a June bug. So my biggest thing for you would be to not be concerned about grub worms that you find here in the spring. Note it. Definitely note it, though. Make a note of it. Take some pictures, put them on Instagram, panic people on my Facebook group if you want. And definitely if you go to local hardware stores, they will sell you some grub treatments. They'll probably sell you one of the long-term grub treatments, which isn't going to work on these anyway for the most part. You need a curative grub app. But either way, I don't want you to do anything in the spring unless you are having large dead patches, but I highly doubt that's the case. What I would say, though, is this is the key to you, that you need to put down a a preventative for grubs this year, and you're going to put that down prior to June. You're probably going to put that down in late May or early June and get it watered in. And there's a lot of different active ingredients you can use. You can go to the store and get the Scots. Now, I think the new Scots, I don't know what the active ingredient is. I think it's got a much longer shelf life when you water it in, or I think it lasts longer. In other words, you can put that one down in the spring, and it'll give you prevention all the way to the end of summer. Make sure you read the label. But I use old school Merit, and Merit needs to be put down sometime in early June and watered in, and it's going to give you about 3 months of control. So that's imidacloprid is that active ingredient there. It's a neonicotinoid, and that's the one that I am used to using. But again, I think that might even be considered a little bit older chemistry now, but you'll still find it in a lot of places, and it still works very well to prevent grub worms. So that's, if you find these grub worms or you find these grubs in your lawn here in the spring, that's a clue that you're probably going to have a problem next year, because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. In this case, the grub worm mama doesn't fly away far from where she was hatched, and she definitely likes to raise her babies back home in your lawn. Sounds like a country song. So I hope that was helpful to you on grub worms. Now, I want to